When we talk about the big three, we're talking about Naruto, Bleach, and One Piece. When we think about the big three, we think about Naruto, Luffy, and Ichigo. But what about the supporting cast though? What about the supporting characters? The big three's supporting cast are completely different. Let's take a look at this video explaining why the big three supporting cast are completely different.
About the big three, we usually focus on the main characters, but the protagonists aren't the only thing that makes these stories stick with us. It's also the people around them. These supporting casts are the lifeblood of their stories. They give us moments of heartbreak, hype, comedy, and sometimes even frustration when they're left behind. And here's the thing, each of the big three handled their supporting characters in completely different ways. Naruto built an entire generation of ninja around its hero, but often pushed them aside as the story zeroed in on Naruto and Sasuke. One Piece treated the Straw Hats like an ensemble where everyone's dream mattered, but slowly as the arcs went on, some of the Straw Hats started becoming less and less relevant. And Bleach? Well, Bleach gave us some of the most stylish and iconic side characters in shonen history, but they also struggled with how to balance them against Ichigo's spotlight. So in this video, I want to break down exactly how the supporting casts of Naruto, One Piece, and Bleach were written, how much importance they had, the roles they played, and what makes each series approach unique. Because when you
Yeah, I feel like that is a good take because if you look at Naruto, I mean, recently I've been seeing people saying, "Oh no, in Naruto and Naruto Shippuden, the side casts um they are not fleshed out well enough. Oh my god, in One Piece, as the arcs go by, some characters, just become less relevant. I'm not gonna talk with Bleach because Kubo doesn't flesh out side characters. You know how like bands most of the time complain. They go from glazing something to matter of fact, it was crazy though.
look at it, the way a story treats its supporting cast says just as much about its identity as what it does with its main character. So let's begin with Naruto. When you look at Naruto, the first thing that stands out is just how many supporting characters there are. The Chunin exams alone introduced an entire generation of ninja, each with their own quirks, fighting styles, and personalities. From Rock Lee to Kiba to Shikamaru, these guys weren't just background faces. They felt like fully realized characters, at least in the early days. And for a lot of fans, those arcs where we got to see their abilities and backstories are some of the most memorable parts of the series. Take Rock Lee for example. The guy can't use ninjutsu or genjutsu, yet his fight against Gaara became one of the most iconic battles in anime. The way he opened the gates, the weight drop, his sheer determination. It was a moment that made fans fall in love with him instantly. And there's Neji with his cold
That is
outlook on
facts.
fate and destiny, setting up one of Naruto's most powerful thematic clashes. The whole fight where Naruto proves destiny isn't set in stone, that your future is something you fight for, that only worked because Neji's character was written to embody the opposite. In part 1, Kishi
You see, now you get people saying, "Oh, Rock Lee should have been the MC." No, no, he wasn't supposed to be the MC. He had his moment. He did have his moment in the OG. Matter of fact, he did have moments in Shippuden. Yes, not well fleshed enough, like in the OG, where um everything about him as a character was fleshed out. But that is the whole point, if you think about it. He got his moment as a character. Now the story has to progress, focusing on the main characters. Not saying it shouldn't focus on the other characters, but that's just how the story goes. It's not that he was completely ignored. He had his moment. As the video says, a lot of people fell in love with Rock Lee. Of course. Now you get people saying, "Oh no, Rock Lee should have been." Bro, come on, bro.
balance. Each of these side characters didn't just exist to fill space. They carried themes, they tested Naruto, and they made the world of Konoha feel alive. The Sasuke retrieval arc is another great example. Shikamaru, Choji, Neji, Kiba, they each got their own spotlight fight. We saw Choji's emotional power-up with the butterfly wings, Neji proving his resolve, and Shikamaru stepping up as a leader. It was Kishimoto showing that Naruto's friends weren't just cheering from the sidelines, they could also carry the story when needed. But here's where the cracks start to show. Once Shippuden begins, that massive supporting cast gets pushed further and further out of focus. Characters like Tenten, Kiba, and Shino practically vanish from the main narrative, and even fan favorites like Rock Lee or Neji barely get any meaningful moments in the second half. Instead, the story narrows down almost exclusively to Naruto and Sasuke. For some, this was frustrating, because it felt like so much potential was left on the table, but
Okay, I completely understand when people say they wanted Shippuden to be like what OG Naruto was like. I completely understand. And I don't have a problem with you saying that. But I do have a problem when you're going to say a character should have been the main character just because. I just don't get the correlation. And I feel like if Kishimoto wrote the story the way that he wanted and stick with the same editor that he had in the OG, me personally, I feel like there would have been less complaints with the story itself, with the Shippuden story, as it is now, because a lot of people were loving Shippuden. It ended, then all of a sudden people saying, but Naruto Shippuden wasn't actually that. You see? And the anime doesn't help its case with it. Oh my, the filler, the filler. I didn't have a problem with the filler. I didn't. But as a new upcoming anime fan, as a new anime fan trying to watch all of that, it kind of goes to you if you want to watch the filler and you don't want to watch the filler. But yeah,
all the supporting characters were forgotten. Shikamaru is the standout here. His arc with Asuma's death is one of the best in the series, hands down. We see him step up, take on responsibility, and eventually become the brains behind Naruto's leadership. By then, he's literally the Hokage's right-hand man, which feels like a perfect payoff for his character. Hinata also got her big moment during the Pain arc, where she confessed her love and stood up against impossible odds. And Gaara, though technically from another village, went from enemy to close ally, with his journey mirroring Naruto's in a powerful way. So with
I just hate how a lot of people downplay Gara. Gara had one of the most perfect character development in OG Naruto. In fact, the whole of Naruto, bro. The level that I fuck with Gara with, bro, it's crazy. Cause he went from that demonic um child to getting saved by Naruto. Then they became friends, bro. Not that the way that I'm explaining it kind of makes it simple, but it's not that simple.
supporting cast, you get this interesting mix. In the beginning, they were essential to the themes and emotional weight of the story. They gave Naruto foils, rivals, and friends who made his journey feel bigger than just one boy chasing a dream. But as the narrative shifted towards destiny, prophecy, and the cycle of hatred, a lot of those characters fell to the wayside. The ones who were developed deeply left a huge mark for sure, while some of the rest perhaps became wasted potential. Now when we shift over to One Piece, you immediately notice a slight difference. Oda doesn't really treat the Straw Hats like side characters at all. Sure, Luffy is the captain, he's the one who declares war on the world and takes down the big villains, but every single member of that crew is written like they matter. Each have their own dream, their own backstory, their own arc where the spotlight shines on them. It's not Luffy and his sidekicks, it's more of an ensemble where everyone's story is tied into the adventure. Think about how the series is structured. Arlong Park got to be Nami's arc. Enies Lobby got to be about Robin's past. And Whole Cake Island, that was Sanji's turn in the spotlight. And you could even argue that Wano gave Zoro a perfect chance to shine. Every
That
arc
is
finds a way
facts.
to dig
That is
deeper
facts.
into one of the crew's lives while still keeping the overall journey moving forward. That's why One Piece doesn't feel like it leaves people behind as much, especially in the early part of the story. Because here's a slight truth. The deeper we get into the new world, the more uneven the balance becomes. Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji are consistently front and center, while characters like Usopp, Chopper, and Frankie often get less attention. They still have roles in fights or moments of comedy and heart, but they don't receive the same level of personal focus they once did. For
That is facts. That is facts. As a person who's keeping up with One Piece, I can simply say that after the time skip, we don't get that unison, that family felt feeling that we felt pre-time skip. Is it pre or post? But before the time skip though, because as the video says, it mainly focuses on Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, and I can say Robin too. I can simply say Robin. But the other characters, I feel like they had their moment, but as the story goes, we kind of less focus on them. I don't know. Maybe Oda's still planning something, you know, because in the manga, spoilers, we we got to have a Robin moment, especially in Alba when she met up with you know you know you know. But yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, and Robin. A little bit of Chopper, but it doesn't feel the same anymore. But they're still family, and Oda really loves taking care of his characters. That's what I love about One Piece.
Frustrating, because one of the greatest strengths of One Piece early on was how every crewmate felt equally important. That said, Oda still deserves a lot of credit. Even if the spotlight isn't perfectly balanced, the supporting cast in One Piece is far from forgotten. Usopp still had his legendary moment in Dressrosa with the God Usopp scene, and Robin is still the key to unlocking the mysteries of Ohara and the Void Century. The story makes it clear that each Straw Hat has some sort of value, even if some don't get as much time in the sun as the others. And the brilliance doesn't just stop with the crew. Oda has this habit of bringing back characters you thought were finished. Vivi sails with the crew for just one saga, but she's still relevant hundreds of chapters later in the world's political plot lines.
That is
Law
fact.
started as a rival pirate, and now he's basically one of Luffy's greatest allies with a great backstory as well. Even Kid, who wasn't exactly friendly, ended up being part of Luffy's biggest war effort in Wano. One Piece constantly reminds you that this is a world full of people chasing their own dreams, not just NPCs orbiting around the main character. And that's why One Piece feels so emotionally satisfying when you invest in the crew and the wider world. You're not just watching one person climb a mountain, you're watching an entire family of pirates, each with their own dream, pushing toward the horizon together. Yes, some characters shine brighter than the others, but we have to give respect to One Piece for keeping so many characters relevant even this late on into the story. Its world was meant to be more wide and expansive, while Naruto's was meant to be more tight and personal to the two main characters, reflecting the cycle of hatred. And
That is
finally,
fact.
let's look at Bleach.
That is
At
fact.
first it feels like Ichigo's closest friends are going to be at the center of everything with him.
Okay. Well, when it comes to Bleach, I'm not gonna cap. Earlier, I'm talking about earlier seasons of Bleach. I'm gonna give it to Kubo. Ichigo's friends, his circle, they all had their moments. They all had their moments. But as the story progresses, yeah, I'm not gonna cap. We see we see that dwindle. The characters, for example, Chad. Chad has had his moments, but as the story progresses, he kind of disappears in the background. But as a person and as a Chad fan, to me, it doesn't. But it does feel like that when you just watch and read the story. But hey, the story, if the story didn't mean to focus on other characters other than the MC and type of characters, then it's that.
Orihime, Chad, and Uryu all introduced early, all with powers awakening, all seemingly set up to be Ichigo's squad. And in the very first arc, that's exactly how it plays out. They're training, they're fighting hollows, and it feels like this story is going to be about this small group of friends standing together against the supernatural. But then Soul Society happens, and suddenly the focus shifts. The entire arc is about saving Rukia, which gives her an incredible role in the story, but it also expands the cast by introducing the Gote 13. These Soul Reapers instantly become fan favorites. They're stylish, they're powerful, they've got distinct personalities, and for many fans, they end up overshadowing Ichigo's original human friends. This became a pattern in Bleach. Every new arc brought in new groups. and those characters often took center stage in battles. The Gotei 13 captains especially ended up carrying a lot of the hype moments. And while that gave us some legendary fights, it meant that Ichigo's Day 1 crew rarely got to stand tall in the same way. Take Chad for example. His introduction made him feel like Ichigo's rock-solid best friend, the muscle of the group with his noble sense of honor. But after a handful of early fights, he was basically sidelined. Then by the Thousand Year Blood War, he's barely present. Orihime had a bit more importance, to be fair, especially in the Arrancar arc when her powers and kidnapping drove the plot forward. But even then, she was mostly a motivator for Ichigo rather than an active game changer. And finally, there's Uryu, who got more relevance in the
You see? Now, I'm not critiquing Kubo's writing, and I love Kubo's writing. I love how he plays around with certain themes. That's what I love, and how some characters represent those themes. I just love that. But when it comes to characters outside of the main cast, yeah, I feel like he's not strong on it, but I feel like he will be if maybe it's not this genre. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying, but Kubo, Pen, perfect.
thanks to his Quincy heritage, playing a crucial role in the Thousand Year Blood War, but still a lot of fans felt like his arc could have gone deeper. The exception to all of them here is Rukia. She might not have always been in the spotlight, but when she finally unlocked her Bankai in the Thousand Year Blood War, it was one of the most satisfying payoffs in the series.
That is
Seeing her
facts.
rise felt like a full circle moment for a character who started as Ichigo's guide. Renji as well went from rival to trusted ally, and got a good amount of shine throughout the series. So Bleach did deliver on some supporting characters, it just wasn't as consistent. On one hand, Kubo created some of the coolest, most iconic side characters in Shonen. Then on the other hand, he struggled to juggle them all. Some got incredible moments, while others were left behind completely. So instead of a tight-knit supporting team like One Piece, Bleach ended up feeling like a rotating spotlight. And to be fair, that rotating spotlight gave Bleach a unique flavor. It meant you never really knew which character was going to steal the scene next. The trade-off though was that Ichigo's original friends never lived up to the promise set up in the early chapters. So when you stack these three series side by side, you can really see how different their philosophies were about supporting characters.
This is the reason why I love the big three. They are so different. They are very different from each other. In terms of writing, they are different. The way that they handle the characters are different. It just goes to show how diverse the big three is. Then you're gonna have people beefing, bro. The fandom beefing. I mean, a good beef is a good beef, but downplaying another series just because of something is just crazy. It doesn't make sense to me to downplay a series. It doesn't make sense. Agendas, making fun of something, that is all fun. That is all games. But I see so much Bleach downplay, bro. I see so much Naruto downplay, and it's something that is starting now after Naruto ended. Bleach downplay has been going on for I don't know how long, but even One Piece has its own problems, has its own hate. I mean, any talk, bro. Any talk. People were hating on One Piece. I don't know if they don't grasp that the big three, all of the big three, Naruto, Bleach, One Piece, they're all different. They are very, very different, bro. And this is why I love and respect each mangaka of the big three. I respect other mangakas, but when it comes to big three, I respect them all. RIP to Toriyama, the GOAT.
fascinating is how these choices reflect the heart of each story. Naruto was always about someone proving himself against destiny, so in the end, the focus had to stay on him and Sasuke. One Piece has always been about adventure with friends, so the crew naturally shared a spotlight. And Bleach was built on style, mystery, and a constantly expanding world, which made its supporting cast a revolving door of cool but uneven characters. At the end of the day, all three gave us side characters who became fan favorites, whether or not the story always used them well. And honestly, that's one of the reasons the big three still hold up, because when you think back on them, it's not just Naruto, Luffy, and Ichigo you remember. It's Shikamaru playing Shogi after Asuma's death, it's Zoro standing before Mihawk with unshakable resolve, and it's Rukia drawing her sword and finally unleashing her Bankai. So all in all, these supporting cast moments help the big three to feel even more legendary. When talking about
That is facts. That is facts. I love how he analyzed this video analyzes the whole of Big Three, the side cast and all that. I love that, and I feel like a lot of people should watch this video and get a better understanding.